Chair recognizes Representative Bonnen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Ed. I really appreciate that. Was very well done. As you can imagine, it's a very emotional, hard time for us. It's not been that long, but I want to just share a couple brief things with you because Ed did an awesome job. But our dad was a really quiet man, and it was easy to maybe not fully appreciate or understand the complexity of this guy unless you kind of got to know him. He had a wisdom about him that went way beyond intelligence or intellect, and it was an ability to know right from wrong, even when those of us who are very close to him and around him might easily become clouded in our judgment, or when circumstances might lead you to see things maybe in not so clear a way. He had this clarity about him, about what was true. And I think, and I know that served him incredibly well, not only in life in general, but as an attorney and as a judge, but especially as a dad. I mean, what a wonderful father who can see right from wrong and can instill that into his children. He had a real sense of humor, and because he was quiet and was very dry, you might, again, not appreciate that. But some of the witness to that was that at family get-togethers on holidays, the children and the grandchildren would kind of jockey to position themselves close to him so we could hear whatever came out of his mouth, because it was usually something that was very much worth hearing. And our brother Mark shares the story that one time he was visiting with his good friend Chris, and Chris wanted to be part of the American Diplomatic Corps, and they were having this conversation in the family room, and our dad was just silently sitting there behind his newspaper. And when he heard Chris's aspirations, he quipped, "I'm going to buy stock in bomb shelters." And to be fair, Chris has actually gone on to do just that, and has done well, and none of us have needed to use our bomb shelters as a result of that. He was very determined. And again, because he was kind of quiet and soft-spoken, you might not appreciate that. But when he got his mind set on doing something, he was persistent and he was relentless. And you heard Ed talk about painting the office on New Year's Eve. That was sanding and scraping and painting. And it wasn't like his personal office. It was like the whole building of the office. Because in that way, after the holidays, work was not interrupted. And that was just a common example of what was, life was like around, the Bonnen household growing up. We were all blessed to have had a really close relationship with him, and I'm very thankful for that. And I think that any of the good things that you see around here coming out of me or Dennis, you can know that that originates in him and in our mom, who is here with us today. And in those moments when we're maybe not quite at our very best, well, we own that, okay? That's not our dad, because that's not who he was at all. We love him very dearly. I loved him very much, and he's greatly missed. But I want to thank each and every one of you guys for the support that you've shown our family during this time and during what was a challenging session, and particularly Larry Phillips and Tom Oliverson. Those were guys who really, for me personally, stepped into the void around the time of our dad's death. And I'm just going to kind of leave you with a couple things. One I shared at the funeral service, and that is that the human pupil in darkness will dilate. It gets really as wide as it can because it's trying to bring in any available light, that it might find. And similarly, the human soul, when we're suffering and grieving and experiencing loss, will dilate, and we're looking for hope and meaning and understanding. And in doing that, what we find is God. And his faith, which was very deeply held and quiet and sincere, was something that he was very diligent and disciplined in instilling in each of us. And I remember at his graveside service, this is kind of interesting, his grandsons, particularly the youngest, had decided that they really wanted to help And they were very happy to learn that Papu, which is Greek for grandfather, hadn't been buried yet because they were really good at digging. And so that was going to be their contribution. And so when we were there, they didn't get to do that, but they did get to help to put some dirt into the grave after we had lowered the casket in there. But I had a true peace because I could stand there and look at that and say, there's this wooden casket, but what's in there is just organic material. It's worn out, old body that he left, and he is not in there. And until you are in that moment, I don't know if you can really know how you're going to feel or how you're going to respond. But there was tremendous peace in being able to stand there and have that assurance. But his legacy is his family. He took great pride in us, and in a very literal sense, but then in a practical sense, the whole reason that Dennis and I are here today is because of his integrity and his reputation in our community, and that's really a part of Dennis's story. But I thank each and every one of you for the kindness and the compassion and the support that you have given us.
Chair recognizes Speaker Bonnen.
Oddly enough, I'll be briefer than Greg. Usually goes the other way. I just want to tell two quick stories. So Greg talked about my father's determination, and I get a kick out. He was wheelchair bound for the last several years of his life before he was bedridden. And we were at my parents' house in Angleton, which Kim and I are still there. We gather for holidays and birthdays there. And he was in the wheelchair in the backyard. And Gregory, my youngest, saw him, and they were playing, the grandkids were, and my father wanted to get over to where they were, but the wheelchair couldn't get through the grass. So my father got up out of the chair and took a few steps, to which Gregory proclaims, "He can walk!" And so that was my father's determination. One of the biggest challenges we had was literally having him not get up and be so determined to go and walk. But I'm always very proud of what Greg has accomplished politically, because Greg got elected in a community that he and his wife moved into after medical school, and no one knew him before they got there, and he went and won a campaign on his name and his reputation. The whole reason I'm here today is because of my parents' reputation. I did not campaign 1 minute of one day in the city of Angleton and got around 75% of the vote, and that was solely because of my mother and father. 8 years after I was elected, I had a Democrat opponent, and a gentleman in Angleton called and asked for a yard sign. And so I said, well, I'll deliver it over there myself. And as I'm putting the sign in this gentleman's yard, he says, well, does your dad enjoy being in the legislature? I'm embarrassed to tell you, I said, well, it's okay. Yeah. But the reality of it is, I'm here because a small town attorney and his wife created a sterling reputation. And it allowed me to campaign in Ed's hometown, one of my first supporters of Pearland day and night, Lake Jackson, Alvin. And I never spent a second in Angleton. And I'm here because of them. And I remind myself, and many of you might want to start reminding me this on occasion too, when you become elected, you can ruin that reputation that they built over 40 years in one moment. And so I try to rein myself in with that peaceful thought. Don't destroy what your parents created. But with that, Vice Chair Davis, thank you. She ran our committee at least once, maybe twice in my absence, but thank each and every one of you. We're at the end of this session, and everyone's frustrated. And some have had success on certain things, failures on others. But what's amazing about this body is that we create a family and a brotherhood and a sisterhood amongst each other. And it's in times of loss like we've experienced that it means the world. I thank each and every one of you for that. And let's not ever lose sight of how important we are to each other and getting each other through these losses. Thank you.